All right, Grand Rising. I'm going to talk very, very briefly, hopefully, about this document, the notice to set off accounts. Um, I'm not feeling so well, so I'm going to try to keep it short. But I already put the document in the group so you can modify it and use it how you see fit. But this is what I had in mind. This is what I'm going to do. We've issued bills of exchange or credits. I specifically designed this for credits because the thing about the credits is that they can't return them after you issue them. And also you issue them with a prior year tax return usually. So like, it's 2025. So the recent tax credits I issued was using a 2024 tax return. It's basically to the point where all the companies have had to, they've had to do their taxes by now because about August is the cutoff. Usually, unless your accounting year is different, whatever. Most people, most of the time by August it's done or it's about to be done. And so, if you issue tax credits, which if you don't have tax credits, of course, that's one thing. But they're not hard to get. You can get them when you file your taxes. You're not asking for permission for them to give you the tax credits. They're automatic. As soon as you file your taxes. In the first year, they're debit. In the second year, they're credit. So it is a longer process. So if you need tax credits to accomplish a specific task, that's something that we can do through the tribe because I've gifted a great deal of my tax credits directly to the tribe to deal with problems and whatever people have going on. So you could take those tax credits wherever you get them from, and they can be assigned to these corporations. Once they're assigned to the corporations, they cannot return them. They have to accept them. And so since they have not been reporting where they accepted these credits on their taxes, and we know that they haven't been doing this because if they did, because when you issue them to the when you fill out the form, the K2 form, that's the form you use, the 1065 K2. When you when you send that form into the IRS for processing, it shows up on their tax transcripts. So they know exactly who has issued them tax credits. They know because they all deal in tax credits. Like that's the whole thing. They all deal in tax credits, passing tax credits back and forth, especially in places they can do in lieu of cash. So since this is how they have been operating, and they know that you assigned them or gifted them tax credits. If you sent in the form to the IRS, they've received the notification, and then they didn't credit your account. There has to be some kind of enforcement for that. So that's what this document is. It's the notice to set off accounts. You would send a copy of this document along with the 1065, along with if you've done a bill of exchange or anything like that, you'll send a copy of that along with the accepted for value if you did that. I'm not going to go into that whole process, but if you've done any bill set off processes, you would include that documentation with this and you'll send it. Now you're only reporting the IRS, the K2 form. That's the most important form that you send, but it doesn't mean you don't send the other evidence. You would put that on this document as an addendum, what else you're going to send. So like, for example, on the actual document, it has the original 1065 and the original IRS form. Those are two things that you would absolutely have to include. If you include other documents, you list them underneath there, just so you have a complete list of the other documents that you're sending. So like for me, I've done multiple steps, multiple bills of exchange, different ones, different kinds. I've done credits, because you only need Okay, I got kicked out of my own call. This document is to start the process of informing the government that these individual companies have received payment but are not actually documenting the payment. And this matters right now because people are talking about the Federal Reserve, and they're going to audit the books on this Federal Reserve building that they've already spent $2.5 billion on since 2016, which is insanity. Okay. They're going to audit their books in general. Now, people are calling for all of their books to be audited, right? But if you don't know this, they don't have books. They're not keeping the books. Neither is the IRS, neither is the Treasury. That's neither here nor there. They're talking about the Federal Reserve right now. These people don't have books. They don't have book entries. They're supposed to, but they don't have book entries. So now we're going to start notifying the feds, hey, these people, they said that they got this money from us, but they're not following the processes. They haven't set off the books. Now, people always pay people in credits. A lot of these corporations, these Fortune 500s, because it's a partnership form. If you read the 1065 straight, you'll see it's a partnership form. And so people are always receiving 1065s. This is very common. I know this from working with people who do this kind of business. This is very common. So this is not going to be something that they're not going to read it and understand what is going on. However, they haven't been credited in accounts. And so I'm not sure how many steps after this is going to take to get some, because after this, like after I was sending this out, if I don't get a response from the IRS, then I'm going to send something to the DOJ, because now you have a conspiracy with the IRS, the FBI, and the Treasury not following the monetary policy as has been issued from the executive branch. So then the DOJ needs to be involved. So now we're going to play offense and try to get one branch of government to enforce the rules that other branches of government have set up. I think that that's going to be now I took this document from a process that other people have done, so they are familiar with this kind of document. However, it wasn't used for credits. It was used for the administrative process, which the administrative process, if you don't know, that's when you use a notary to request the payoff from or the notice to set off from the corporations. And it's a longer process and it's an expensive process. And so that's why there's a notary public on here, but you don't have to use a notary for this document. It's just, if you don't, just make sure you remove that part of it. But I just left it in there in case people have done the administrative process for setting off accounts. And this is the document that goes with that. Although they should have it, it doesn't mean that they do have it, because again, these people like to gatekeep documents. So, all right, so let me go through the document. So the notice is by you, which is first, middle, last, care of, first, middle, last, uppercase, because the living person is the upper and lowercase, and the Social Security person is all uppercase. And of course, the notary public, if you have one in the address, the date of the notice, and it's going to the Internal Revenue Service. You can send this by certified mail. The original document had registered mail on it, but if you know about the whole mail thing, certified mail versus registered mail, technically they're the same. So there's no, they're not the same. Registered mail, you only need to use when you're sending live financial instruments. You don't need registered mail just to make sure someone gets it. And me personally, I'll be using priority mail because it comes in a separate envelope, the red and white envelopes, and they look different. So I'll be using priority mail. So that's what you would put on here. And then in a matter of, I put enclosed tax credit transfer for set off. You can also put, if you did bill of exchange, enclosed, what do they call a bill of exchange? It has another name. If anybody's going to do a bill of exchange, they can ask me and I'll find out what it's called because I can't remember off the top of my head. So please find and close the following instruments. The original 1065K2 issued to the company, dated tax year, whatever, by company or individual with tax ID. What that means is who issued the tax credits. So for example, if the tribe issues the tax credits to an organization for you, then it would be the tribe. If you issue the tax credits from your personal tax credits, then it's your name. I put that just in case people have other tax credits. They have obtained tax credits from other sources and are using those tax credits to offset this specific debt. And a lot of people don't even know how to properly document their tax credits because no one is told how to do that. But again, I'm not going to get into all of that right now. And then number 2, original IRS form. Yes, the payment voucher. And it tells you how to endorse it here. At the bottom of this little paragraph, private prepaid treasury exemption number is your social security number with no dashes. Charge the same to your first, middle, last social security number with dashes. Of course, the social security number with no dashes is a closed account, and the social security number with dashes is an open account. And that's what the dashes mean if you've never heard that before. These instruments are being tendered by your name, first, middle, last, here in principle for the set off of company or individual name. Again, you can use these credits to pay off people too, who say that you owe money. That's why I have both listed here, and their tax ID or social security number if it's an individual, and are to be used to affect debit and credit accounting transactions for the settlement and closure of the account, of said account. If any of the enclosed instruments contain defects or are incorrect, incomplete, or inaccurate, please return the same to principal. Put your address if you're not using a notary via the notary public at the address shown above within 10 days from the postmark of this notice. They have 10 days to let you know if something's wrong with your process. Please exercise ordinary care as a party entitled to enforce these instruments because the IRS have to enforce the instruments. With bills of exchange, it's the Treasury. Like, they have to enforce the instruments. You cannot, as an individual, enforce the instruments. Technically, it should be the Federal Reserve enforcing the instruments, but they got enough problems on their hand already. So you put the power in the hand of the IRS. And that's because if you've done any of the paperwork, you already have a contract with the IRS. So this is not, if you filed taxes, you have a contract with the IRS. And guess what? If you file your taxes and you owe, another state, they'll take that money from your taxes and give it to the state. So they have no problem with enforcing this when it comes to your personal taxes. They shouldn't have a problem with enforcing this when it comes to tax credits or bills of exchange. They cannot, again, back to the Civil Rights Act of 1866, they cannot tell you okay, we operate one way for these corporations, but we're not going to do the same thing for you as an individual. So we'll see how they respond to this, but I don't think it's going to be an issue, but you never know. Again, the next step is to report the IRS to the Treasury for violating the Civil Rights Act of 1866. And the lady who's in charge of the Civil Rights Division, her name is Harmeet Dillon. She don't like this kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Like, they've really been getting on people who are violating civil rights. So this turns into a civil rights issue because I have every right to access the Treasury, the IRS, the FBI, whoever, the same way as these organizations. And they've been using these organizations, specifically the IRS, to collect debts from us. Now, not now, but we've always had the right to have them to enforce these debts being paid. So if they don't, again, that becomes a civil rights issue. This is a civil rights issue, okay? If they don't follow it. So let me see. Please exercise ordinary care as the party entitled to enforce these instruments to ensure that all debit or credit transactions, ledgered accounts with the tax ID, which be the tax ID of the company, and your name, first, middle, last name, Social Security with dashes, are done so in the best interest of the United States Treasury, because the purpose of the Treasury, again, is to discharge the debt. Especially if you have a bond on file with them, you're supposed to be discharging the debt. You're supposed to be at zero. And so the longer you stay with a debt, it means the country has a debt. So this is what all of this is about, discharging the debt and bringing our accounts to zero. They cannot infringe upon that. And that's what you're reminding them. You guys are supposed to operate in the interest of the United States Treasury, not in these corporations, not in these, whoever else is involved in this. You have to operate in the interest of me because we have a contract. I don't have a contract with these other people. Another document I would probably include with this is the rescission of signature if you have it, especially when you send it to the company, because let me finish the sentence. Thank you for your consideration, and I look forward to a relationship that's mutually beneficial to all parties involved. And you sign it with your first, middle, last name, and you're as the principal. You send it to the FBI Financial Crimes Unit and the Treasury Financial Crimes Unit. I don't have the addresses for those yet, but I'm gonna pull them. I had a hard time pulling this letter together. In general, you're trying to discharge your debt. All of this goes back to discharging the debt, a debt that you're not supposed to have. There's a process that you're supposed to be able to do to easily do this. They have totally usurped the whole thing so that none of it makes sense. And as you try to navigate it with things that seem reasonable, they get more and more unreasonable in their behavior, because these people are gangsters. But the United States is supposed to operate in its own best interest. Now, if you have the policy of the federal government that we are trying to present ourselves as a country that is not bankrupt, because that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to set the case to pull this country out of bankruptcy. And America has not been run outside of bankruptcy since 1913. So nobody even knows what this looks like. But we have the example of it with all of the paperwork that, especially that I've been talking about, but just in general, we have the examples of how this country is supposed to work. And so this is a step to informing the government, letting them know, hey, this is how things are supposed to be done. You're not going to be able to just move forward with this kind of behavior and there's no response from the people on handling this. We have to be able to have absolute access, because if we go back to the time period where we weren't in bankruptcy, that means that the civil rights, everything that happened from 1913 is basically going to be backtracked. And so the Civil Rights Act that we would be going off of would be the one of 1866, because that's the one that was enforced when the Banking Act and all the stuff happened in 1913. That's the one that was enforced. And so we have to start making these people do their jobs. They're obviously trying to come out of bankruptcy. That means we as individuals have to also be following that same line, that same thought process. And this is just a part of that. So, it's not a long, I was going to talk about the documents you can include. So if you've had previous correspondence with so you'll send a copy of at least this form with the K2 and the 1040 ES filled out exactly how they say to fill it out. You'll send that copy to the IRS and also to the FBI and the Treasury. Now, what you send to the company is this same letter. You'll put a cover letter in there, and it's something like, for your review, this has been filed, this has been sent, and you'll send a copy of this with the two things that it says on here, plus your previous correspondence with them trying to offset the debt. Because again, if you sent these people a bill of exchange, they cashed it. They have a process for cashing these. They sent it in. If they did not expressly send it back to you, they deposited it. You can only assume that. They're not allowed to destroy documents and say, oh, well, this person was acting in bad faith, so I have to destroy this document. They're not allowed to do that. They have to send it back to you intact. They do. And even if sometimes they could send it back to you intact, because you do know they have all of this online deposits and all of that. Like you can deposit a check with your phone. They have the same access to deposit checks with the Federal Reserve digitally. They have a whole little system for that. So they could have, even if they send it back to you, if they didn't credit your account, they could have still deposited the account without giving you the credit. See, because when it comes to checks, that deals with the Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve and the Treasury don't actually have a system where they work together. It's so weird how they do the whole thing. And so this seems like a good time to strike while the iron is hot. So what I would send to the company is these same two documents. I will also include rescission of signature, where you rescind your signature all the way back to the date of birth, because that's what the rescission of signature says. And if you still send them a bill of exchange, a copy of that bill of exchange. They can find it, they can pull it, they can get credit for it just the way that it is. It doesn't matter. It has your signature on it. They know how to monetize it. That way you're reminding them that you've already, first of all, you do have a contract with them. You've attempted many times to have this debt dealt with, and they basically ignored you. So now you have to move on to some sort of enforcement measures. Like, there's no getting around that. Again, the next step after this will be to take this same packet, add a different letter to it, which when the time comes, I'll put that together and send it to the Department of Justice, because they're violating your rights. That would be the next step, is to file. That's what you got to. But then you're filing a complaint with Department of Justice against the Treasury or the IRS, which is not the same as filing a complaint with the Department of Justice against one of these companies. The government is supposed to act on behalf of the people. It's required to. And so if the IRS, who has access to the files, who can see if they actually claim the stuff or not, is going to act like these companies didn't receive these credits, even though you sent them to the IRS to be processed, then something is wrong. You have to go to the next step. And because everybody is walking on eggshells right now, this should not be something that is super difficult for them to take care of. And I feel like the more people do it, they can't just ignore a bunch of people doing this. Like, if it's just one person, that's one thing. But when they have, if you have a bunch of reports from a bunch of people all regarding the same process, which is a completely legal and normal process that all companies engage in, that's a huge problem. Plus, it's a problem that's easily solved. All they have to do is take the money from them, like charge them the credits. Like they have to report it. Because remember, especially these companies, they're not reporting any income. They are literally reporting your payments as gifts. They're not reporting it as income. And because I did a deep dive into this. Like I literally found this, like they are not reporting it as income. They're reporting your payments as gifts. And so, they can't do that. And you can't force them to do the accounting properly. So this is really the only way to square that circle. I mean, most of the bills, I went ahead and paid, but I still issued them tax credits because I know the tax credits are traceable. And your payment, even if you make it online, even if you write a check, it's still not traceable because their accounting on the inside does not reflect when they go and file their taxes. The only thing that reflects when they go and file their taxes is these different forms with the IRS, and they have to address them. And so this is the first step towards reporting these companies and getting the government, making sure the government is aware that these companies are ignoring all of these various payments that they're getting. It's one thing to ignore, because whenever you make a payment, right, you at the end of the year can do a 1099 and get your credits back. But in the process of that, getting your credits back, you still have to report who the credits came from, who they were paid to. So they could look on those forms and see where the money is going, but they don't count it like that either. Because